Howdy, all you delicious people. I am here today to review Frank. So, I had heard through the grapevine of this movie that this movie was actually inspired by a character called Frank Sidebottom. Evidently, a very pop culture-ish like character, and I had actually seen a little clip of Frank Sidebottom while watching the James McAvoy movie Filth. I just so happened to see that while watching that movie. And then, like, coincidentally, I went into this film, and I guess it was actually just inspired by the guy who was Frank Sidebottom. So, going into this film, we have a man who is to consistently have on a headpiece of sorts that he is to wear 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Uh, Really, it gets down to the masking like, well, does he shower with it? Yes. Does he eat and drink with it? Yes. Like, food has to just kind of be, like, kind of uh, done in a very odd, like, way, has to be kind of blended or has to be, like, done in a specific manner for this guy to eat and consume things. And but this guy like always has it on all of the time. So this is kind of a journey of a band's struggle and really just a journey of a man who is to wear a headpiece all the time, to the point of eventually people needing to actually adjust and understand this person, of if they are to have a reaction or if they are to feel something. Frank has to let everybody know. Like, Frank has to basically say sad look or surprised uh, surprise gaze or any number of things to let everybody know how he's feeling about things and his facial expressions while he's doing this movie or while he's doing this with these people. So this isn't like a documentary; it's an actual like inspired by movie. We have actors like Michael Fassbender playing Frank, and I was just kind of surprised. I'm like, well, like I've seen like Michael Fassbender do some kind of like independent films, like a movie like Shame that like that movie is was really just shocking for me to watch as well as Filth did, um, because like it just kind of has a story of just uh, people that are eventually just like eventually pushed to the brink. They just kind of go in almost a unsane like manner, desperately needing something, or desperately just realizing how unsane they actually are eventually once they head further and further into this movie, or into their movies, I mean. But, anyways, so going into this movie, we are more like Frank is just kind of a part of this film, but the movie is mostly focused on a guy named John Burroughs. John Burroughs, the actor, Donald Gleason. I remember seeing him in a film called Sensation, and I thought that was kind of a very interesting film. And so when I saw him here, I was like, oh, great. Like, I've seen him in a number of things by now, like Star Wars movies and so on and so forth. So it's kind of good to see him here. But this guy is a keyboardist that is to try to come up with any kind of song just by kind of going throughout his neighborhood. And while he's trying to come up with these songs, like, he's realizing that maybe they're not that good. But uh, coincidentally, eventually, this keyboardist eventually finds himself just so happened to, by chance, find a band that actually needs a keyboardist because their keyboardist had sadly died. So this keyboardist is to start going with this band, and all of a sudden they're just like, well, yeah, like there's something about this keyboardist guy that I think we just need him. And then all of a sudden, we are to have this keyboardist basically give up every single bit of his life for this band, and eventually it either goes really well or it either goes really horribly. It seems like these people start to get a social media following, but that doesn't actually accumulate as far as like Facebooks or Instagrams or whatever. That doesn't accumulate to album sales, but it also doesn't accumulate because this is a independent band that is just trying to like struggle to get out there, but like they can't actually get out there because they don't have an album or they don't have a tour or they don't have a this or that, but they want to just continue to get their name out there with this interesting kind of like pop electric kind of music that has these interesting lyrics to it, to where we have like Frank, who is kind of coming up with music out of anywhere, and like some people are thinking that it's great and some people are just like, I don't know. So with that said, I think I've talked about this long enough about setting up this movie. So let's go into spoilers about this film, because at the end of the day, probably what I say after this might actually get people unintrigued about this film or intrigued about this film. But at the end of the day, also, I thought this movie was just kind of interesting. Like it doesn't have to like I wouldn't say that it's a good solid movie, but I would just say that it's an interesting film. It's out of the normal kind of film, and that's I think the thing that I liked about it. So I would say that it's probably not one of those where I would say it's a good solid film, but I would say that it's a uh, like kind of in that almost okay kind of way of watching a movie. Like to me, it just kind of falls into that okay kind of way, just because it's like it's an interesting enough movie. So with that said, I think it's about time to go into spoilers about this. So let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time we need to spoil this movie. So, like I kind of said in the cryptic like version, so we have John, the guy who's mostly focused upon this. John is to go out through his whole neighborhood and to try to come up with lyrics while he's basically walking through the neighborhood of his spot. He's to eventually see a girl with a yellow coat and a red coat, and so like John is making up lyrics as he go, like, hey, I saw a girl with a yellow coat. Oh, I saw a girl with a red coat with a bag. What is she gonna do with that bag? Like, he's just like trying to come up with some kind of like lyrics, bizarrely, of anything that he is to see while he is to just like go about his day. Like, he's trying to just come up with any little thing that could quite possibly be a song about romance or a song about like any number of things. And so we all of a sudden have John, who is going back into his home, like trying to find some kind of key or some kind of tune or some kind of something to make this bizarrish coat, women with coat song work that he had gone into. And so John is like struggling to find some kind of something that he could make a song out of. And so John eventually is to go on to the beach. John eventually is to find a seemingly dead body on the beach. So John is to call upon the authorities to get this body, and we find out that it seems that this body had been from a keyboardist from a band. And so John is like, well, hey, like coincidentally, I'm a keyboardist. Like, how about I help you guys out if you guys are doing a show? And and we have God, um, and so we have one of the band members, let's just say, going and mentioning to John, it's like, well, hey, yeah, like we do have uh, a opening now because sadly enough, one of our members is dead. So how about you come to our show? And so it seems that we end up finding out the guy who was to have John come in evidently was the keyboardist of this band. Oh, his name is Don. Um, Don previously was the keyboardist of this band, and I guess if they couldn't find a keyboardist, maybe they would have had forcibly Don do keyboards for this band. So, but John steps in, and so we have Frank who is to come out, and John at first is kind of like a little bit of like okay at first, but eventually he just kind of goes with it. And so all of a sudden, like they start to get into their first performance, but then all of a sudden we have Clara who is to eventually have a fight with Frank, and then all of a sudden the performance just goes belly up. So they just stop their performance and then they head out. And so that's when John is trying to figure out, okay, the guy with the headpiece, is that just for show? And Don is like, no, like he does that all the time. And so John is trying to find more and more about like Frank via the other people, asking if any one of them has ever seen Frank without his like headpiece on, and they're like, no, we've never seen him with his headpiece off. So uh, going in here, like Dawn is to eventually have John come with them to continue to be a part of this band because it seems that Frank liked this keyboardist, and so Don is like, well, okay, I guess you're gonna just be in the band now. So John just naturally assumed that he would just be with this band for one whole gig and then call it a day. But no, what they were actually going to do is have the entire band all go into um, one little cabin by the woods and record an entire album and stay there until they could get the album recorded. And John is like, whoa, this sounds like a real like this seems like a real like big ask for me to do. Like I thought I was just gonna be like here for another gig and then be done with this, but Dawn is like, oh no 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 no, like we're just gonna have you here until this album is finished. And so really going through John starting to really meet the band and starting to click with them or click with some people, especially Frank. Really, there's times where a lot of them try to go and try to showcase certain songs. Like John is to eventually showcase a certain song to Dawn, and Dawn is like, "Yeah, that song is crap." Like, if anything, you know what? I had also a song that I did once that I know full well was crap. Like, if anything, it seems that Frank can kind of just make interesting songs pop out of anywhere, and a lot of people praise Frank for his talents, and plus also a lot of times like I would call Frank kind of a musical guru. Like he kind of is like trying to inspire people while they're playing and is like uh, kind of channeling them into uh, being a much better musician around him, and like he's trying to consistently inspire people and consistently trying to be this like this Zen master that is trying to get this unique performance out of everybody while they are to play. Like, it's kind of interesting, but also it's just kind of like, okay, like, so when are they gonna get this album out? Like, it kind of feels like they're always just like they're getting somewhere, but like it doesn't mean that there's a song that's going to come out of that. So John, from time to time, consistently starts to do social media things for this band, like showcases little videos and clips of what they're doing, and eventually those clips are to get huge views and huge likes and huge whatevers. Because John is just kind of like trying to keep the band up in popularity, or to get them to be intrigued by people. So, because John has all kinds of social medias like Twitters and Facebooks and stuff where he's posting all this, I guess, for the band. But anyways, so during this whole time when they are to try to keep going on and doing this album, eventually, like, they are like continuing to go on to be in this cabin, and eventually money starts to run out. Like, the band like starts to run out of money, so eventually they're like, oh my god, like, we don't have enough money to continue trying to come up with more songs for this album. So John says, well, hey man, like, I have a life savings that I've been storing away. How about I just take my life savings and buy this cabin for a longer bit of time for us to come up with this album. But it seems the previous owners of this cabin, because I guess this was only to be rented for a certain time, but Frank bizarrely takes this woman of this family and starts talking to her, and it seems that all of a sudden, like, both Frank and her are just kind of playing around and doing all these fun things together, and then all of a sudden, evidently, just Frank wins this woman over, to the point of them definitely being able to keep this cabin for however long that they need. Uh, and it seems that eventually Frank just, I don't know what's going on with my hair right now. There we go. Smoothing it out a little bit, but anyways. Um, so Frank is to eventually go on and like continue to like stalling of this whole album thing, and eventually it just gets to the point to where Don is to eventually go and hang himself, sadly enough. And the weird thing of it is that the first thing that they thought, because Don had put on one of Frank's headpieces, and so they immediately thought that Frank had done himself in, but actually it was Don. They go and they take the headpiece off, and eventually they realize it's Don because Frank comes in with the groceries. And so they're like, oh, so this was Don. So really, we eventually push on after Don is to go and get a Viking's funeral, basically burnt out in the water. We push on to eventually have them still not exactly have an album out, but it seems like they're getting much closer to figuring out some kind of music that they can put out. So all of a sudden, there is a spot that wants this band of Franks to perform. It seems that they want this band to perform at this spot. I think it's called Southwest. So, or South by Southwest or something like that. It's some kind of big concert that it seems, because it seems like they have a huge amount of numbers through social media. It's about like 2,500 roughly around there of views, and eventually it continues to go up. So justifyingly, they get a call because John is their manager. They get a call saying, "Hey, you guys need to go to this concert." And so when the band is to arrive and talk to these people, they're like, "Well, will people even care for us to be here? Like, are fans going to be here? Like, what is actually going to happen out of all this?" Because like right before this is to actually happen, there are also some downsides to this. So both John and Clara are to eventually just be just more and more upset about one another. It seems like Clara is causing a toxic environment consistently, but it also just seems like almost everyone is causing some kind of toxic environment for any number of any of their band members. So Clara eventually is to spot that John is in a jacuzzi, and I guess he decided to not have any clothes on. And so Clara eventually sees John get out of the jacuzzi, and so Clara just jumps on top of him and just humps him to death, basically almost drowning him in the jacuzzi and all kinds of things. But so John is kind of assuming now it's like, well, then like I guess like you and me are an item, and Clara's like, no, I will never be an item with you. Like I'm never going that is never going to happen. So eventually this leads to eventually Clara, who is eventually going and having a night out with Frank, and then John has to go and find Frank because uh because John is to eventually spot Frank and Clara that are together, and it seems that Frank is having a real hard time, and maybe Clara is not exactly helping things, and John is saying that Clara is causing a big rift in this band. So Frank is to try to get, or John is to try to get Frank to get back into like performance shape, because like dude, we have like a number of days or hours or whatever to perform, and we can't perform without a singer. So Clara is to go out of anger and just stab John in the leg, and so John is to arrest Clara for stabbing him in the leg, and so now they're out of one performer that I guess is to be the one xylophonist or whatever, the little needle thing that you like. They kind of had that in an episode of Big Bang Theory where they were to do the Star Trek theme. Like they were had a like I think it was like a theremin or some kind of like some kind of musical instrument that like that weird little like she's the one that mans that evidently. So uh John is to go on and like say, "Hey man, like yeah, but we're still ready. Like yeah, we missed one band member, but I think that's just gonna make us have an even better performance." But then all of a sudden, Frank is to be in bed, and kind of the other two band members are talking to Frank, and John is like, "Well, hey man, like why aren't we like gearing and getting ready to go? Like we have a couple hours before we're supposed to be at the concert." And so immediately we have these two band members that are like, "Yeah, about that." And John's like, "What?" And immediately they're saying that, like, you know what, I think that you're creating a toxic environment for us, and I think we're out. He's like, dude, this is like the biggest, this is like the biggest, like, performance that this band has ever done. And now, when we are to actually reach something important that's actually going to get our band somewhere, everyone is bailing out. It's either they die or they bail out, like literally. So, or they leave, literally leave. So, so now John is saying, well, F it, you know what? We can still put on a performance. It can just be called unplugged, like acoustic. Like we can just come up with some kind of variation of our songs in a different way and we can still perform. So John is taking Frank out and just like, hey man, I think we'll be fine. We have we have two people that are driving, both John and Frank to the show, and they're like, dude, like, why aren't you nervous? You guys should be nervous. Like, if anything, this is the biggest show that you're ever gonna do, and you guys should be severely nervous, which is just kind of amping up Frank to just like, because when he was at this one spot where there was a massive group of people, like Frank just kind of got like really scared to where eventually he ran off, and that's when John had to run after him and eventually spot where he was, which eventually he was with Clara, because Clara was mentioning that they needed to get Frank out of there, and John was thinking like, no, I think considering Frank is being met by all his fans, I think he's having a good time, and Clara's like, no, I don't think he is. And so eventually that is the whole stabbing situation that was to happen. So Frank is too, you can tell his hands are shaking. You can tell that he's like kind of getting really nervous and really just like I can't wait for this to be over kind of thing. So both John and Frank are to get to the concert, and so all of a sudden Frank is to drastically change the way that he has ever looked before, and so Frank is to all of a sudden like drastically change his makeup and his outfit to all of a sudden make him look female, and like his clothes looks very female, and all of a sudden like his face looks very like feminine, I'm assuming. But like I guess that's kind of what he was trying to do to look drastically different. And so both John and Frank are to go out there, and John is to start to play one of the songs, and Frank just falls over. And John is like, what's going on, Frank? And Frank is like, dude, the songs are all shit. Like, the songs are all bad. Like, we can't do this. And so John and Frank are to basically hold on uh, to their apartment room as long as they can after this whole concert is over. And so evidently this thing has still gone viral, like them basically like having someone just like fall over and faint, I guess, is a viral thing, I guess. So basically a lot of people are leaving comments like mentioning like, hey man, like I can't wait to actually see you like the next time you guys go to Southwest and whatever, like I hope you guys make it back there kind of thing after this whole debacle. So John is eventually with Frank, and they're just trying to just like figure out where the next move is. And it just gets to the point where John is pushing Frank to just like, you know what, I think you need to just take off the mask. Like I think you need to just take off the headpiece. And Frank is like, I know, I don't want to take off the headpiece. So John almost tries to take off the headpiece because like Frank's headpiece is just like there's like smearing of stuff all over the place. It doesn't look clean anymore. And so when John tries to help Frank take off his headpiece, Frank bolts. Frank leaves, and then eventually Frank also uh, like hits his head on the ground, and that kind of or no wait, when Frank goes onto the concert, when eventually he falls, he breaks a piece of the headpiece, and then eventually when Frank is to go out onto the streets, eventually Frank is to get hit by a car, and the headpiece is to break even more into big chunk of pieces. And so John is to ask this driver, like, hey, did you see the did you see that guy with the headpiece? Like, did you see his face? Because now John has to find where Frank is, and he's never actually seen him before without the headpiece on. So John eventually also goes and gets hit by a car, and John goes to the hospital, and now Frank has to say that Frank is missing, and so he has to call the police reporting that Frank is missing. And so they're like, "Well, could you describe this man?" And John like tries to describe him, but he's like, "I don't even know, so this is a waste of time." Like he no longer has his headpiece on, and that's probably his best descriptive thing. And so now I have nothing. So eventually, John is to eventually just try to scour the internet to try and find where Frank is. Like, he wants to try to make amends with him. He wants to try to uh, just kind of like figure out where Frank is so he can help him. There have been plenty enough times where Frank uh, was to basically be spotted in some spots. So John was to go out there just to have it be a joke, just to have it be something that somebody made up some fake location. And so consistently, John was getting all of these runarounds and all these fake like things. Till eventually, someone finally said that I think I have a ability to be able to help you. And John is like, I hope this isn't another joke location. And so they end up finding that no, like this is where like for sure this is where this guy is. So John goes out and eventually finds Frank with his parents. So John is to be with this person's parents and kind of ask them like, well, hey, like when did he start wearing the headpiece? And so they're to say it's like, well, like there was supposedly one costume party that supposedly Frank was saying that he was going to. And so his father made him this headpiece to just say, well, here you go. Like like there's the headpiece. And so Frank was to wear this ever like right after that, and just to consistently wear it. And like Frank's father knew that there wasn't actually a costume party, but like Frank's father just let him do that anyways, just let him have it. And so really John is like, well, why did you just guys just let him have it for so long? It's just he just needed it. Like he just needed to wear this so that way he can just like like feel better. Like you could tell that he just had some mental problems, and so the headpiece just made him feel better. John also asked his parents, like, well, like was Frank like did Frank have this like musical ability after putting this headpiece on? And Frank's mother was like, no, like he always had this. Like if anything, just the headpiece just kind of like conflicted with that a little bit. If anything, like he had a much stronger ability without the headpiece on to eventually be able to perform a little bit better or whatever. So John is to eventually see Frank like play with his piano, and so John is like trying to make amends and trying to apologize for forcing Frank to take his headpiece off, and also John is to eventually find out where Clara and the rest of the band members are playing, and so John doesn't speak with Clara. John doesn't do anything, but eventually John does take Frank where Clara is, and so we have Clara who is singing this song, um, and then eventually we all of a sudden have Frank who is to come in and start like putting this song together about like something that he loves, and so all of a sudden the band like starts like doing this song, and Frank is doing this song like crying while he's doing it, and like basically John just walks out of the bar and just walks away, and I guess he just realizes that maybe this band is good the way it is, and having me there or just having any seemingly keyboard ist there like just like doesn't work that well, or there's something that doesn't click with having that keyboardist there. So John just walks out, the movie ends, and that's it. That's all. That's what happens to this movie. So I am going to get out of here. Bye everybody. Bye everybody.